Hello, welcome to RECENTERED, episode 22. My name is Gary from the YouTube channel Immerse Robot, and joining me as always is Rog, also known as Flute Rogie, and Lee, also known as DaysNetic from the YouTube channel DaysNetic, and there'll be a link for that channel in the description to this as well. So we're going to be getting into what we've been playing in a moment, and also talk about some of the other news that's come out. So we've got the Apple Vision Pro stuff that we'll go through. Probably won't stick on that too long, only because it's been sort of spoken about to death over the last few weeks. So we'll give a few thoughts on it anyway. And then we've also got the UploadVR Summer Showcase to go through, as well as a few other little bits and bobs. But before we get into that, why don't we have a catch up? Rog, what have you been up to? How are you, mate?
I'm just trying to survive this weather what we've been having recently. It's just knocked me on my back. I blame my dad. I blame genetics. He's always been the same. Soon as the sun comes out, that's it. It's like, yeah, I'm unable to function very well. But yeah, it's been a nightmare for trying to play some VR. It's like 30 minutes in VR at the minute, and then take the headset off, and it's drenched. It's not a good time. If that, to be honest. Yeah. Some days it's been a bit of a struggle, to get inside there. Lee, what about you? How have you been coping with this weather? It's been warm over here.
I don't know if people not in the UK or perhaps don't understand when we say, oh, it's so hot and it's like 29 degrees. I actually messaged my mate in Australia and said, oh, it's roasting here, mate. It was like, I dress like I'm going up the North Pole when it's 29 degrees here in Australia. But they don't understand, like, these houses are built in the UK to keep heat in. Yeah. So even at night, it's 30 degrees in your bedroom at night, and you just can't get to sleep, can you? It's just a horrendous nightmare. So I totally feel Rog and totally hear what he's been saying. And we're talking Absolute Celsius nightmare here, not Fahrenheit for those listening overseas. Definitely Celsius.
The problem with our houses is you get like halfway through the day, and your house is it's heated up. The temperature will dip in an evening where it's really nice and cool outside, but that heat stays, and it stays all through the night. And it's just it's just really, really bad, and apparently we still haven't discovered air conditioning, so that just makes it even worse.
I remember last year it got up to like 40 degrees, didn't it? At one point last year, and that was, I mean, you couldn't even get air conditioners; they were all sold out on Amazon and stuff. And you think, well, yeah, of course they are, but at the same time, you're going to use it probably once every 5 years or something like that. But it was really bad. That was 40 degrees over here. That was like the hottest it's ever been on record, I think. So I
think it was like I checked the temperature at like 2 o'clock in the morning in my bedroom. It was 32 degrees.
Yeah.
So crazy. But it's going to get even hotter as well, Roger. I think it's going to get to 35 in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
Well, this is not a podcast about weather. It's about VR, believe it or not. But for me, I've been keeping up with some of the showcases because it's E3 season without E3 at the minute, and Xbox had their showcase, and I've not really been interested in a lot of the flat stuff that's been showing off at the minute. But Starfield, did you guys see the Starfield stuff? Because that's a game for me. I can tell you that. It
would be a game for me if it wasn't 30 frames a second. I'm just not interested.
Really? Is that going to turn you off?
Right. Because I've been playing recently. The Final Fantasy 16 demo came out.
Yeah.
And I'm both excited for it and disappointed in it at the same time, because the game seems amazing. I love what they've done. This is the first proper mature. People are calling it sort of like a cross between, we'll call it cross between like Final Fantasy and Game of Thrones, like Game of Fantasy or whatever.
Yeah,
it's a proper more mature sort of story compared to all the others. But the frame rate, man, you've got performance and you've got graphical, for the options. The graphical one sort of runs at 30. The performance one runs at 60 for some of the time, but it can't handle it. So I thought, I'll try and keep it at I'll put it on the graphics mode for the 30 frames a second. I can't play 30 frames a second games anymore. I used to tolerate them. Yeah, I used to tolerate them because I'd rather play something and not miss out on it rather than just not play it at all. And I put it on this, and it just looked. I thought, oh wow, I 30 FPS to me now is just utterly juddery, and I cannot stand it. So I played it on the performance mode, but I was still sort of not happy.
It is a big difference when you go directly back, and I can understand it. I mean, I'll be playing Starfield on PC anyway, where it should have unlocked frame rate, so I'm hoping that I can get Starfield up to 60 anyway. But on the Xbox, it's locked to 30.
Yeah, sorry, I'm forgetting it's coming to PC, isn't it? I totally and utterly forgot about that. But then again, that'd need me to get a new graphics card. You know, what I mean, the money's sat there, but I just still can't bring myself to do it.
Don't blame you. I don't blame you. They're absolutely ridiculous costs, graphics cards, and they're just going up and up. And we've spoken about this before. But what my plan is, I'll get it on my PC, and then I can always stream it to my Steam Deck as well, so I can play a little bit on my Steam Deck, then go and play a bit on my PC. But all the time, the reason I bring it up actually on this show is because all the time I'm playing it, I'm just going to be thinking, I wish this was in VR. It's one of those games that is almost like a dream VR game. It seems to be. So hopefully some talented modder will be able to do something with it, because I doubt Bethesda will do like a native VR version now they're sort of part of Microsoft. You never know. They did Microsoft Flight Simulator in VR, so I just don't think it's going to be a priority for this particular game. So
no, I don't see it.
I mean, I saw some clips of it. I don't really know too much about the game because I've not really been like watching much this week, but is it kind of like No Man's Sky type thing? I kind of got that kind of vibe a little bit. Yeah,
people have compared it to that. It's going to be basically Fallout, Skyrim in space, bigger. You know, that's really how.
Is it multiplayer as well?
No,
it's
so.
Just single player.
Is single player?
I
don't believe so. No.
Is it more of a crafted experience? I actually don't know that much about it because I was that sort of disinterested in it. I really don't know much about the game, but I was assuming it was more of a crafted experience rather than like
definitely
more than not a procedural type thing.
Well, they've got 1,000 planets in there, right. So there's elements of procedural generation in there, but they've also got, and it's also a lot of people are talking about how it's not got like seamless transitions from space onto planets and things like that, which is important for games like Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky. It's one of the highlights of those kinds of things. So it's definitely going to be more crafted anyway. It's still going to be that Bethesda kind of open world RPG type game, but bigger, it seems, and I mean, it looks great to me. So it's we'll see anyway. It's still going to have that Bethesda jank, I would imagine. So we'll see how it plays out.
Speaking of planets, just very quickly, I just want to apologise to anyone listening or watching that I am on a different one today because I am quite medicated on this new medication. So I want to apologise in advance.
But the other thing that I've been doing yesterday and today is I was sent a Pimax Crystal, a loan unit. I've got it for about 6 months. So I've only had it for sort of 24 hours and I've been playing about with that really. I'm not going to say too much here, but I'll probably upload a video early next week, I would imagine. I might even record something tonight after this podcast just to give some first impressions on it. But it's probably not fair to talk too deeply on it at the moment. But I will say I went into Elite Dangerous earlier today, and there's no doubt the display and the optics and things like that, it's the clearest and the sharpest display I've seen. I've tried a Vario Aero as well, and that was fantastic clarity too, but to me that had some issues with like binocular overlap and stuff. There's no issues with that in this headset. It's definitely got some, it's not a perfect headset, it's still a Pimax headset, and we know what Pimax are, and this is sort of got those teething problems. I watched a video with Matteo and Brad Lynch, sadly it's Bradley, this morning, and they were sort of very critical of the Pimax Crystal, and honestly on the individual points they were bringing up from having it just sort of 24 hours, it's difficult to argue against some of the specific points they have, but at the same time they also didn't negate the fact that this headset could potentially be a quite big value to certain types of players. And, I'm thinking specifically like the simulation type players, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Elite Dangerous, races and things like that, seated types of experiences. That's what's jumping out at me at the moment. To me, it's not like an all-rounder. It's not a Beat Saber kind of headset. And there's no reason for it to be, honestly. But yeah, there's it's big, it's heavy. Doesn't matter too much if you're seated, that kind of stuff. But it does sort of. I wonder. It's a bit of a criticism I've had of the PSVR 2, and it's just where we are in VR at the moment. We're on that transition period, aren't we, where we're going from this kind of bigger form factor with the Fresnel or aspheric lenses, the bigger displays, over to this other kind of form factor with the pancake lenses and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this transition period, you're going to get crossover. And I do wonder in a few years' time how antiquated something like the PSVR 2 and especially this, which is on another level to that even, will look. But I've got to say, just going back to a major positive, this is the clearest image I've seen in VR ever. So yeah, there's something to be said.
Wow.
But I'll get into all that a lot deeper anyway in the future, because it's not fair to comment too much yet.
Nice. Well, I mean, Lee, when you're feeling, words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I would say when you're feeling more up to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll organise that, because it would be good to get you. There's some teething problems, and I've so full transparency, they've sent me this for 6 months, but they have said before if there's any serious problems before I post any videos, then I can give them 72 hours to try to resolve the problems before I post a video on it, which seems fair enough to me. That's okay. And of course, if they don't resolve them after that time, then I'll make sure that I bring these problems up. Yeah. I've not had very many problems. The setup was really, I mean, I could talk about the setup. It was literally seconds. I installed the software, connected it, and it was straight away. And this is probably a little bit jarring for Pimax users, because traditionally it's always been a little bit finicky to get these things actually recognised and stuff like that. So yeah, the setup was absolutely like no problems at all. But there's a few small things that I've had. Honestly, nothing major at the moment, but I can speak all about that in the future anyway.
So you didn't have a broken head strap clip on yours then?
No, I was waiting for that. They apparently because they contacted me and said they think they've solved it with a packaging issue. But they said just, when it arrives, just let us know. And yeah, it was absolutely fine. So yeah, I got lucky there. I did the one issue I did have. Sorry, we're staying on this a bit longer, but the one issue I did have was nothing to do with the Pimax headset actually. But in Steam VR, see, it connected and everything was fine. I could go into the headset, I could see the Pimax home and everything. But when I tried to start Steam VR, it wasn't detecting that a headset was connected to the PC, and I just couldn't work it out. I sent them some stuff on Discord, and they said they'd get back to me, and they were replying pretty quickly. But in the end, what it was literally just the Steam VR module. When you have a crash in Steam VR, it automatically disables all the modules, and it won't start them again until you activate it. So the Pimax module must have been deactivated months ago on my Steam VR install. Right. And of course, because I've not had a Pimax headset, I've never bothered to try and look into it and activate it again. But yeah, it was a simple fix, and everything was working pretty much straight away after that.
Nice.
But I will talk about the Pimax Crystal, of course, a lot more over the next few weeks. But for now, I'll leave it at that. But we should probably get into the show. And let's get into what we've been playing. So I'll pass it over to somebody else first. Rog, why don't you go first on Before Your Eyes?
Okay, yeah. I was originally going to talk about this on the last episode, so this is probably coming in a few weeks later than it should. And even then, it's been out for quite a while. But yeah, I picked this up using the PlayStation Stars points that you can get if you've got the PlayStation app on your phone. And it's still on there. You can either just get the game direct. If you've got enough points, you can get the game directly, or you can spend money on for money. Try and learn to speak again. You can spend points to get wallet funds, and then you can just buy it that way if you like.
Right.
So basically, this is by Goodbye World Games and published by Skybound, and it's a narrative story. I won't even say adventure. It's a narrative story. Yeah, it's a story. You're playing. You're going through a story. You get options that you can select as the story goes on, and obviously the gimmick here is it uses the eye tracking. This is done to select menu items, as you might expect, but also as you're playing through, sometimes a little metronome icon will come up, which means as soon as you blink, that scene's over and you're on to the next one. I don't think it's a good method for going through this sort of game. I mean, the basis of the game is you're dead and you're being ferried to the afterlife, and you have to tell your story on what happened. And I won't go into spoilers, but there's a twist part way through. This game probably isn't aimed at somebody like me, because it plays very much on the emotional side of things. And we've gone through this before, like when I've mentioned that Oculus Story Studios one before. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, yeah, the one made in Quill.
That's that one, yeah. And it's...
Dear Angelica,
Dear Angelica, I couldn't remember the name. For something to get me emotionally in a game, there needs to be a setup beforehand, where with this, I don't know, it's not as bad as that, something like Dear Angelica, where it will almost sort of like, forced it down your throat, like, oh, look at this is so emotional, feel things. It's not as bad as that. But I am not the target audience, so I really don't know if I can say if it's good or not, because it's not aimed at me. I picked this up basically because it was a freebie, because I had the points on my PlayStation Stars account, so well, why not? It's well done. It looks okay. It doesn't look amazing. It's reprojected, which is kind of shocking considering the visuals, although they're fine, they're very cartoony, are in no way, shape or form anything like, it doesn't seem like it should be running at, it should be running at 120. It really should. Yeah. And there's points later on in it, towards the end, where an effect happens, something's happening, and this repeating effect keeps happening, which frankly goes on too long, and the sound effects there were driving me bonkers. But the effect actually seemed to cause frame rate issues. And I was talking to, and I can't remember if it was James or BMAC on the Render Reality Discord a couple of weeks back. Artflood organised just like a voice chat session on there, and there were a few of us in there talking about things. And one of them in there said the same thing. They found there was slowdown towards the end, which you might sort of think, well, it's a narrative sort of slow-paced thing. It's not a problem. The problem being is it affected the eye tracking, which I'm sat there. Right. I was literally blinking, trying to select options or move the story on, and it was taking 3 or 4 attempts when I was actually even consciously blinking. Oh. So the frame rate was dipping enough that the eye tracking wasn't working properly. Now,
just looking at the footage on here, it doesn't look like it should be in reprojection at all.
No.
I mean, it's bizarre that they can't optimise that a bit better. But
it's really odd. I mean, this is a port of a Steam game, which apparently you could play using a webcam. But it's like, it's nothing about it looks complex enough that it should be. There's no reason it should be doing it. I mean, experienced developers as we are, saying this shouldn't be, but you look at it and you think, no, it really shouldn't.
The only reason we say that, though, and every VR gamer will feel the same as this as well, it's when you see examples of stunning looking games that don't reproject, and then you see something like this that does reproject, things don't align, and that's, you're right, it's difficult because we're not developers, so maybe there's other things going on.
But you can play it without the eye tracking, and because that was the gimmick, I went through the entire thing using the eye tracking. But you can instead actually go into the menus and turn the eye tracking off, and I think it's basically a click a button to continue when you see the metronome. And if you do pick this up, I would thoroughly recommend you go with that option, because then you can enjoy the story rather than getting to a point where you think, hang on, I want to listen to a bit more about this, and then you find yourself struggling not to blink because because if you do, that's it, that scene's over. And there was times as well where I just went to adjust my headset a bit just to make it a bit more comfortable, and that movement on my head, because I'd shifted the headset a bit, it sort of thought I'd blinked again. So just even adjusting my headset caused it to jump forward when I didn't want it to. But yeah, it's not a lot. It's $11.99 or $15. If you like it, a very story focused sort of thing, and you like things what really are emotional, then you probably will get something out of this. I say one of the guys on the Discord said they really enjoyed it, but this is not my, I'm not the correct target sort of, audience for this. You desperately need to get a PSVR 2, Gary, so we can compare on some of this stuff. But yeah, £12, $15, or you can spend your PS Star points on it if you've got those. Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
It's difficult to sum it up when it doesn't affect me as it does a lot of other people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll go next on Crimen Mercenary Tales, or as I learned, it was pronounced in game because they say Crimen Mercenary Tales in the game, so we'll call it that. We did get a key for this as well, just one. So I played this one on the Quest 2. It's by Carbon Studio. It's £10.99 over here in the UK and $14.99 in the US. And this is sort of a combat-based adventure, I would say. And the premise is you play as this guy who goes into this inn in a place called Crimen, and you meet these people, and when you meet them and give them a high five, they'll start to tell you a story of an adventure that they had. And when they start to tell you, then you're sort of suddenly transported to that to play through their story as they sort of narrate it. And so I played a little bit of this. I think it's around 3 hours long in total. It's a budget game. I think that's the first thing. It's very much a budget game in terms of how long it is, but production values are pretty good. I feel like some of the environments and things like that were pretty well done. It's got this kind of comic book look to it that we've seen several times in new, like Borderlands, but done in a slightly different way to Borderlands.
Right.
Kind of look to it. But the combat is based on these. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a combat game. You're just going through level on level through a different story that people are telling you, and the combat is sort of. It's highlighted, so the enemies will come up and they'll gesture as if they're going to attack from the top or the side, and you can block an attack and then do your own attack. And you just work through these levels. We've seen this kind of stuff before. It's almost a little bit like Vanishing Realms in some ways, but I think I'm trying to remember Vanishing Realms combat because I remember it being like this, but maybe it wasn't. But they sort of highlight the direction they're going to attack, and then you block it. And then occasionally they'll throw their weapon up in the air in slow motion, and you can catch their weapon. And it's really level-based. That's what it is. You're going through these different levels, and there's a boss battle at the end. And that's pretty much it. But, I mean, honestly, I think it's pretty well done for a budget title like this. £11 is not... It's not that expensive, and if this had come out, 2-3 years ago, I think people would be raving about it far more. I did watch a few and listen to a few reviews on podcasts, and although nobody really hated it or anything, it just didn't really wow them. And I guess that's how I feel. It's not going to wow you. It's not doing anything particularly exceptional, but it's also not a bad game for £11, really. I mean, I've got to say, I think I was more impressed with it than some of these other people that got it, but it's really difficult to pinpoint why that would be, or why anybody would necessarily dislike it, other than the fact that maybe it's slightly out of place with expectations today, but for the price, I think it's pretty much on a par with some other stuff. So the graphics, honestly, I felt like the graphics and the environments and stuff were pretty good. The enemies, the NPCs and stuff were pretty well done as well, within that stylized kind of way. So not a lot else to say other than if you like a little bit of VR combat, level-based stuff, then it might be one to check out. But probably won't wow you. I'd say that, really. Did any of you guys see any trailers for this or anything? I don't know if you've seen anything about this.
No, I've literally seen nothing about it now.
No. It seemed to have slipped under the radar a little bit, honestly, from what I've seen. But I wouldn't say there's anything that was done particularly bad. It's just not going to blow you away.
Yeah.
Okay, Rog, what about you? What you been playing next?
So the next one was Cosmodread for me. Now this has gone down really well. generally in pretty much every other area of the VR community. So this is just setting myself up.
Yeah.
Know? Right. But I'll say it again. This is another one. Again, it's a horror game. Yeah. And anybody who's listened to this podcast before, you know my opinion on horror games now, in the fact that they just do not affect me. And this is exactly the same. So anyway, this is by White Door Games, and they probably know them from, or him, they, whoever. I don't know how many they are. Is it a solo dev?
As far as I know, it was a solo dev. So that's the horror element coming in. Who did Dreadhalls? I think. Yes. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, back in the day, Dreadhalls back on the DK, well, the early test version on the DK1 actually did scare me back then. This is all before Alien Isolation came along. So yeah, this is basically Dreadhalls in space. So you've got a procedurally generated ship that you land on, and you've got a series of tasks to do, like set coordinates and fix things, and then find the escape ship, and basically you've got to try and get to Earth. The problem I've got is, from the start, it puts you into a very dark, well, ship, this thing you're on, and it's just very dark all along, and it's counting on you being scared, I think, to really to really sell itself, and I'm just not. I just wasn't, and I know I'm probably an outlier on this because I've been through and watched quite a few reviews, and everybody seems to absolutely love it and find, a lot of people out there find it terrifying. And if horror does get to you in VR, I've got to say, this probably is a good buy. It's like, how much is it? £13, $15, yeah. And I think if you're a fan of just being scared in VR, then there's not a lot to complain about. The problem is I'm not, and therefore it didn't get to me, which meant that it just devolved into a very slow-paced collectathon, because one of the main things with it is one of the first rooms you find, even though it's randomly generated, it's like this large area, and it's got like a 3D printer in it. So you spend a lot of time salvaging and gathering resources to throw into this printer to build stuff. And on my first run through, I found some schematics for some armour. I thought, oh great, throw that in. And so then on the subsequent runs, it doesn't take too long to maybe sort of salvage some stuff and get some armour. The problem being, and I think Roots mentioned this on Virtual Strangers. Wes didn't have. I don't think Wes had the problem, but I had this same problem that Roots did, in the fact that I barely found it. I didn't. I don't know how many times I played this, but I just didn't find any more blueprints. I found the blueprints for the armour, and then that was it. So I don't know whether I was just being really blind and missing stuff, or the random sort of nature of it was just off. I only ever got 2 weapons, even though I was finding plenty of ammo for loads of other different weapons. I found 2 or 3 audio logs, and there seems to be a load of those. They're the collectibles, so there is sort of a story there if you find the logs and listen to the logs. But this stuff just wasn't dropping for me, and it were really winding me up. So I left it for a few days, and I went back in for a couple more runs a few days later. And on the second run of that, I timed it. It was 44 minutes I spent on that run, and I uncovered like 60-something% of the ship. So I think you can basically do this in maybe an hour or so, once depending how the randomness of it sort of all comes together, what you've done before, how much stuff you've unlocked and whatever. But yeah, I just wasn't finding anything, and it becomes slow, and because I'm not scared of it, it just becomes a slow, tedious walkathon with some very sort of lackluster combat. The weapons, I only end up with 2 different weapons, and neither of them felt particularly good to use. I can't remember if there were any haptics or anything like that. It's just slow. The movement is slow. So for me, it just became a plodding sort of walk along, find the next mission, what you needed to do, collect any parts you needed, On the occasional run, sometimes the bits wouldn't be there. I've struggled to find the bits for the armour or whatever. And it needs you to be scared.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't. So for me, again, I'm the wrong person to give an opinion on it. I would say, if you're thinking about picking it up, go and watch any other number of reviews, because everybody seems to love it.
I remember when it came out on Quest last year sometime, was it? I assume it came out...
it's a while back now, yeah.
Yeah, it might be last year, it might even be the year before, I can't remember. But I remember it getting generally good reviews, but I'm not sure anybody really... I don't know, I've not seen any reviews recently or anything, and especially not of the PSVR 2 version, but I don't know if anybody was absolutely blown away by it, but yeah.
Yeah, also the PSVR 2 ones I watched, everybody seemed to be really enjoying it. So.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've not seen any of those, so it might be a little bit different on that. Because the thing you've mentioned, and looking at the footage that you've sent over as well, it does look very dark, which might look good in the PSVR 2 headset, I guess, with the OLEDs or whatever, but even then... It sounds like that didn't really impress you too much anyway, did it?
No, because I think it's 90 frames a second, so that's not an issue there. But it does actually have performance issues in places, not very often, but there's very specific areas that I can remember. If I saw them, I could go to them, and you can recreate the frame drops just by turning around. One was in the area with the dropship shuttle thing. If you go into one of the corners there, and you turn around, and you can see the frames dropping. And you look at the graphics. I've not played the Quest one, but from what I've heard from what the reviews I was listening to, the textures are just the same, and they don't look particularly well. They're not. They're not bad, but they're not great either. They do look they've just been ported straight over from Quest, which is a sort of a bit of a disappointment, really. It really could have, it could have done with an extra lick of paint, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, before we get on to Killer Frequency, which I've played as well, let's get Lee back into it. Let's talk about Walkabout Mini Golf.
I've played a lot this week, and, because I've been on this medication and stuff, it's like I've got like a preview screen into the podcast, so I'm quite happy just to sit here and listen to you guys, to be honest. But,
to be honest, I've not played a lot of VR this week either, just because of the weather, like we were speaking about. But a lot of this stuff, it's from a while ago, because we obviously had a big show last time. But let's get into Walkabout Mini Golf, Journey to the Centre of the Earth course. This is one that we all went into. I've only played the easy course with you guys, but I do know what happens on the hard one. I've heard other people mention it. So did you guys go in together as well to play through the hard one, or separately? Or
we did. We played with, was it Darren that came to your house?
My mate turned up the other weekend. He brought his Quest with him, so we all jumped in.
Yeah. So Lee, what did you think of this one?
It's a bit... I started watching the film last night because I got back into it, and I realised, the weird light things. It's like this is the 50s, 60s film, I think, that I watched. I didn't realise it was you wind them up to keep the lights going, but I've since realised that from watching the film. So they dotted about the place, and there's quite a few nice references to it on there. I wasn't too keen of it, if I'm honest, when I first started playing it. A bit like Upside Down. It took me a while to get into it. But now I've been back and played it a few times. I jumped on Clickster's stream with some of his friends as well, and I went on with PD, and then we've been on with Roger and you guys, and then it is definitely grown on me. It's good how they've used the environment for some of the shots, and the sand makes different speed to it, and you're hitting things off mushrooms, and when you get further down into it, and I think the main area when you get down to the bottom is really quite spectacular.
That last area is one of the best looking areas in Walkabout. Yeah. It really does look good. I think the main problem with it, like you said, Lee, I think when the first time we started playing it, we played about 3 or 4 holes, and this is looking a bit... It's just the first few holes really aren't that great. They're very just cave-like, but the more you go through the actual course, the more it starts changing, the better it gets, and it keeps getting better all the way to the end. And then that sort of like hole 17 or 18, it just looks brilliant.
I mean, fair to it though. In the film, they are actually in the cave bits quite a lot, so I think that's why it's because you're working your way down, aren't you? I mean, one of the holes, I think two of the holes have got two waterfalls coming down in the middle, and that's quite cool to stand and look over the edge of that. It's quite impressive. Yeah, it's definitely grown on me. It's one of my favourite courses for sure now.
Yeah, it's probably the same. It really, it's. I keep saying it's like £3. It's like
it's no brainer. Yeah. It's I feel it's basically the same as you guys. I think it got better as it went along. That final section looks stunning as well. But I enjoyed it. I think after a certain point, they start to use some of the same tricks that we've seen in some of the other courses, but that's bound to happen. There's only so much you can do with mini golf, but I think there's still enough variety and enough imagination going into these holes that makes it like an essential purchase. Any new one that comes out, it's like endless value, really. These developers must be doing really, really well to continue doing this. And I think they said, it might have been you who told me, Lee, that they've mentioned somewhere that they've got sort of courses planned up until sort of end of next year or something like that.
Yeah, they've got quite a lot of courses planned. Yeah, I think every 6 weeks they're releasing one at the minute. And when I jumped in with Clicks to Stream, one of the devs was there. I believe his name was Ryan, so I apologise if I get that wrong. And he was the guy that did the water animation on the level and some of the shadow textures, I think. And I said, the water animation kind of reminds me of The Secret of Nim. And nobody knew what that was, apart from Clickster, who said I was old. So, yeah.
Oh,
but
man.
There's just not a lot of bad things to say about it. That's the thing. Any of these courses, they're just great value, and there's nothing really bad to say about it. It's
even the least impressive ones are still worth your £3.
Yeah. This one, it's got a nice little touch with the raft that we all got onto as well, and then go over to the island at the end. Really good, worth picking up, of course, as well.
And we did get the keys provided as well, so thank you very much to the developers for sorting that out for us, and Gary especially.
Yeah, although, I mean, it's temporary, we'll pick these up as well. So it's just to say we do get a little bit early access to the courses, but we still have to purchase them after the fact. So, it's nice to just get a bit of perspective in order to talk about it on the podcast. But, we'll be picking these up anyway. I've not picked as many up as you guys, actually, the courses. I've not picked all of them up, but I've got a few, and I probably should it's more just getting just thinking about actually going in and buying them, because whenever I play it I'm with you guys, and you guys have bought one, so I just get a guest pass, honestly.
Well, I kind of count the days as soon as it gets released. If, for the next one, is it Evil Layers one, or the I can't remember what it's called. When that comes out, I'll be counting the days down. I'll be like to Rog, right, 6 o'clock, Rog, 7 o'clock when we're going in. And,
well, this is your favourite game, isn't it? VR game, I think you've said a few times.
Definitely,
yeah. Okay, well, I'll get on to Killer Frequency, which I played a bit of on the Quest 2. This was another key that was provided by Team 17. This is available on the Quest 2 for £20.99 or $24.99. So how to put this? What is this game? So this is a bit of an odd one. You play this radio DJ on a late night phone-in show, and previously, there's a bit of backstory where you had this big DJ job in a massive city, and then for some reason something happened, and you have to find a job in a really small town in Middle America, and just take on this job and start to do this show. And the whole game, really, you're in front of your desk with a producer, but then you start to move around the building, the radio building as well. And the premise is, I mean, it's ridiculous when you actually think about it, but it's sort of done in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, where what happens is the sheriff is murdered in this tiny little American town, and apparently a serial killer that used to stalk this town in the 1950s comes back. And by the way, this game is actually set in the 1980s as well. And everybody thought this serial killer had died in the 1950s, but it seems like he's come back and killed the sheriff. And all the 911 calls for that evening are put through to your radio show, because I mean, it's ridiculous because you've got experience of handling calls and stuff like this. So you're doing all of this live on air. And like I say, it's not serious. It's done tongue-in-cheek. It's not supposed to be taken in a serious way. So you get all of these calls from people who are being either, just general calls, or you've got these ones that are being stalked by this serial killer. And it's your job then to try and help get them out of a situation that they're currently in. So, for example, I'll give one of the earlier ones as an example, just so there's not too many spoilers. But there's this woman who calls in. She's been attacked by this serial killer, and she's made it back to her car, but she's dropped her car keys on the way. And so you tell her to sit tight. She's locked herself in the car, and then the puzzle is really about trying to work out how she can start the car. So you walk around this radio station, and luckily there's like a show that goes on at this radio station where it's like a mechanics and car advice and stuff. You find some magazines and stuff that show you how to hotwire a car, and then you go back and call her and explain how to do this stuff. So the premise, I mean, it's difficult because I've not really played a game like this, but it's interesting. But I will say there's definitely going to be people that will not enjoy this, mainly because it's very narrative focused. And there's long sections where you're standing there listening to dialogue. You've got your producer who you're talking to. You've got these calls that are coming in. And there's backstory going on. And in the quieter times, and then you've got these puzzles and things happening in between as well. Generally, I mean, I think it mixes things up enough. It asks you to move around. You're not just stuck in one place. You move around the building and you're doing all these different things as well. But the general story is pretty interesting. I've got to be honest, I really do like this game, but I don't think that some people will, and I can. Do you know what, Rog? I'm questioning myself now, because the fact you don't like Another Fisherman's Tale makes me think, is my judgment just way off now on everything that I'm playing? You really screwed me over. Because I think you would like this, but there's elements that I think some people wouldn't like, because if you are not into listening to dialogue, and there can be sort of sections where you are literally just standing there listening to dialogue, listening to backstory before it gets back to you actually doing something. And I can understand that some people might not like that.
Yeah. Do you know, I think you'd probably enjoy Before Your Eyes, way more than I did. It's a bit of a weird thing with these sort of narrative focused games, because I'd say I probably read more than, say, the average person. I don't spend hours every day reading, but my collection of books is a bit too large. I desperately need bookshelves. But narrative, actual focus games where it just is that, large amounts of conversation, I just don't. They should appeal to me, and they don't.
Yeah, this one probably wouldn't then. I think that's important for people to know before they pick this up, because it is that. The narrative, I mean, although ridiculous, it's still pretty interesting. You've got this serial killer called the Whistling Man, and whenever somebody calls in and you hear this whistling in the background, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And it sort of plays on that. It's an interesting game, I've got to say. It's not something I've really experienced before, and it is a flat game as well. I would say, and I was saying to Lee before we started, I don't know, maybe it's slightly overpriced for what it is, in my opinion. But I'm enjoying it. I've played about a couple of hours. I've heard it's about 3 to 4 hours long in total. So it's, it lasts for a while. But
I know you said
I'm with you on this one, Gary. You kind of sold it to me. I kind of like the idea of it. You've been saying.
Yeah.
So I'd probably like this one too.
You said it's sort of like a bit ludicrous, the premise of it. Is it just it's ludicrous but serious, or has it got a comedy element to it? Or
no, there's definitely comedy elements as well.
Right.
But there's also like it plays on that quite well actually. It sort of goes back and forth between the comedy and mild comedy. I wouldn't say like it's going for that, but it's definitely done in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. It understands, it's self-aware enough to know that the actual premise of diverting all 911 calls to a phone-in radio show is ridiculous. But it plays on that pretty well, and it is what it is. And there's some quite well thought out puzzles, and you can, if you go for a wander around the building, so you also put on records and stuff. There's nothing really that taxing in it, and from what I've played so far, a couple of hours in, I've not found any puzzles that you're going to get stuck on or that are too challenging. You will play this for the narrative. That's what it's for.
So has it got any actual licensed 80s music then, or is it all their own stuff?
It's all their own stuff, it seems to be. Yeah, it's all made up stuff. Yeah, and you put
that could have sold it to me. That could have sold it to me if it was some. I did enjoy it, but while I'm playing it, I am thinking, this is not going to appeal to everybody. Definitely not. But but I mean, the big question then, really, considering it's Team 17, guys, where's Alien Breed VR?
Yeah. Project X VR.
Project X VR done exactly the same way as like 2076 Midway Multiverse.
Yeah. Super Frog VR. Right. Yes. Okay.
Bring back Alistair Brimble for the soundtrack.
Right. Well, let's go on to a bit of the news as well. And the first one, of course, is the massive news that has been spoken about non-stop since the announcement, and that is the Apple Vision Pro. I don't know where to begin on this one. So I don't want to go through all the specs and stuff like that. It's been announced a long time ago. I think people that are interested know all the specs. They know what this headset is, and also probably more importantly the price. So it's $3,500, which is the biggest thing that probably came out about it. There were rumours it was going to be around $3,000, but they went even further than that. I'm not going to show a trailer of it because I don't know how Apple react even now to having trailers, but I'm just showing
a few kind of people showing the showcase. That is a fact.
Yeah. Copyright strikes left and right on all of those live streaming that. So I'm just showing some stills of it as we talk about it. But Lee, I'll go over to you then. What were your initial thoughts on this, about the headset itself and potentially what it means for the VR industry?
I mean, I don't know. I'm still not sure who it's aimed at. Like the Quest Pro, they've tried to aim that at businesses more than anything, but now they're trying to aim it towards gamers, I guess. But with this, it was like showing the bloke, wasn't it? And he's stood on his workspace and he's got 3 monitors up and then he's taking phone calls and he's doing all that. And I thought, well, that don't apply to me. And I don't know anyone who it would apply to. For that sort of money, who wouldn't just sit at a desk with a PC anyway, or a Mac? I got slightly confused. I mean, I love the tech in it. Don't get me wrong. I thought it made me want one, you know. But it's like it's definitely out of my price range. And I think I don't know, Reddit somewhere. I mean, allegedly that someone asked Tim Cook, well, what about normal average folk? Do you think they can afford it? And he just said, I don't know. Well, I can tell you now, Tim, we can't.
No,
but I'm just confused as to who it's aimed for. I mean, like watching the Disney stuff, and they know how to do a showcase. I'll give Apple that, but I don't sit in mind watching it. I do watch some movies, but I'm not in it for a long while because I'm sat in front of the TV anyway. I mean, even then they were sat with like a giant screen watching a film, and you've only got 2 hours worth of battery. And then I just got a little bit confused with some of the stuff, but I suppose production wise, and if you've got lots of friends to talk to on FaceTime, then it might be something that you'd want to look at. But for that kind of money, I really don't know who's gonna buy it, apart from folks that's got plenty of money to burn. But then when you look at things like, because we're into VR stuff, which is expensive anyway, but someone who's into photography, in my past life I was a photographer, and you're picking a $2,500 body up and a $2,000 lens up. It's not much for that sort of thing if you are really into it.
It's firmly Gen 1. I think it's easy to see that it's Gen 1, ultra high-end Gen 1, basically. That's what this is clearly. And a lot of people were talking about the price because people have been talking about the price constantly about this.
Yeah.
They were going back to the original Mac announcement as well, and the equivalent of what that would have been today. And it would have been, $7,000, something like that. Today in today's money when that was announced. So people are talking about it from that point of view. there's a lot of different angles to take on that price thing as well, because of course people bring up the privacy aspect. Apple are focusing on privacy. They're not going to, their business model is not the same as Meta, so you could argue that that's a way. I mean, honestly, it's difficult to really say that this is that much overpriced based on the technology they've put in, but that also doesn't negate the fact that it's still an expensive headset that most people can't afford. Rog, what do you think?
If this thing had been announced at, say, 1,500 quid, and I mentioned this to you on Discord the other week, then that money what's sat there that I just can't bring myself to spend on a graphics card had been spent on one of these. That that showcase was really good, and it really does put Meta and Sony to shame in how to sell a product. I mean, the big thing being though is that price point, and it's just on one hand the price point's a good thing because it just removes that, and it removes the hype level or any hype I would have for it, because it's just beyond what I could afford to pay for one.
Yeah.
So I can't I can't be sort of like chomping at the bit wanting to get hold of one because I know I can't afford one. So I suppose there's that. But yeah, it's the thing more than anything. What's got to me is the amount of discussion afterwards and the amount of people who just really don't understand what this is. Yeah, even in the sort of VR community, the amount of people who keep saying, "Oh, it can't do VR," and I just like, give me all the Picard facepalm gifts now. It literally shows you going from AR into full VR in that presentation using that the crown, they call it, the little dial on the top, where you can literally dial in the amount you're in sort of pass through or into full sort of fully immersed mode, or whatever they call it, the full on environments.
Yeah.
There's the confusion is just it's even there in people who should know better though. There was somebody who posted on Twitter some was he ex HoloLens or ex Magic Leap, and I can't remember. He was one of the two. He used to work on one of those,
right?
And he was giving it all. Well, it's not going to look as good as that in a presentation anyway, because you can't project that level of clearness onto reality. So there's a guy who actually worked on either HoloLens or Magic Leap, not even realizing what this thing is, not realizing it's a screen you're looking at, and it isn't pass through like actual AR. It's. I mean, it's been gone over loads and loads of times, and it's to death. What I would say to anybody who's listening who really wants opinions on it is go and listen to Kent Bye's Voices of VR podcast, because he interviewed 3 people there who got hands-on time with this. He interviewed, I think, Ben Lang,
Ian Hamilton,
that's it, and then Scott Steen, who's from CNET. I didn't know who he was before, but he seems to have, from what Kent said, he seems to have as much experience as like somebody like Ben Lang when it comes to VR and AR stuff.
Yeah,
and they all give pretty good and positive impressions of this thing, really.
Yeah,
I mean, Ian Hamilton said he called it the best technology demo of my lifetime.
Yeah.
Which is, you've sort of got to, well, it does sound pretty impressive. Yeah.
It does, yeah.
Norman Chan as well from Tested, he got some time on with it as well, so if you go to Tested you can get his view on it. But yeah, I'd love to see one. I think I think one of the main the things with it is that they didn't mention the actual FOV, although it seems to be described as somewhere between a Quest Pro and a PSVR 2.
Yes.
So it's in that 100 to 110 degrees field of view in it, sort of diagonalish. Yeah. It's the standardish sort of thing, which I think is the biggest disappointment. But everybody seems to say how good and how clear that display is, and I think that's the thing. It's there was somebody posted a video the other day. I can't remember the channel, but it was like a collection of sort of small sound bites and stuff from people who had actually had hands-on time with the demo. I'd not heard of any of these people, but they were all obviously tech bloggers and journalists. and there was just everybody was just impressed.
Yeah,
it was, I think it's one of those things that it's going to be easy for us to dismiss until you've actually tried it. It does sound like it's one of those things that once you try it, it's I get it now.
Yeah,
sort of things.
I'm not going to dismiss it at all. I think I'm really pleased that Apple have entered the market. I'm really pleased they're doing a device like this. I'm pleased that this thing exists, even though I'm not going to be able to pick one up. I think it's like a glimpse of the future, because all of this technology will trickle down, and in 2-3 years' time we will start to see all of this stuff. Maybe not even from Apple, but from Meta or from other Samsung, whoever. All of this stuff will start to come to us eventually, and I think that's just a fantastic thing. And you're right with Apple showing this in the way they did in order to get this across to mainstream audience. This, by the way, was a news story, I think. This is the most viewed Apple video on their YouTube channel. 50 million views of this particular device. That is massive anyway.
Yeah.
So the only concern then is, I think they will stick with this now, and eventually, of course, what they want to get to is glasses, whether that's possible or not. But I absolutely think this is a good thing. And it's not for gaming. Of course, it's not for gaming, but it's still virtual reality. See, VR is synonymous with gaming. That's the difficulty that we've got at this moment in time. VR is synonymous with gaming. It's brought in flat gamers that want a new way to play VR, and it's incredibly well suited for that use case. It's so good to play games in VR. But VR as a concept has got potential way, way beyond that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that because you are a VR gamer that you shouldn't have any interest in this, because I think all of this stuff is going to trickle down eventually and get to the point where we're all going to be enjoying all of this technology in games as well. So this was also something important to point out. This was also a one more thing moment, which I think I was waiting for. I don't know if you guys were waiting for this, but I suspected, because whenever they launch a new or announce a big new product line, they always seem to use this one more thing, and it goes back decades. And there's actually a YouTube video about the history of one more thing, and it's been used, many, many times, but it's only used in specific situations. And now Tim Cook has taken on board what Steve Jobs used to do, and having this as a one more thing moment is massive. It is. It was last used, I think it was the Apple Watch when it was last used, or I might be wrong in that, but the fact is this is a new product line, and they didn't use VR once. They didn't say VR once. Tim Cook mentioned augmented reality, but the way this was described is as a spatial computer, which was Magic Leap. That was a Magic Leap kind of thing, really. I think that's where it came from. It might have been around way before then. I'm not too sure. Do you know?
It's been I can't remember when I first heard it, but it's been around for quite a while now.
Yeah.
But again, looking at sort of reactions from people, there's a lot of people out there now who think Apple have suddenly come up with spatial computing.
Yeah, ridiculous.
And it's oh, come on, it's been used loads. But one of the other things I want to mention as well is I've seen this mentioned several times. I think GT might have mentioned it as well. But there's several people have had a very similar story where they've had friends and family, people in the VR space, friends and family come up to them who before have had absolutely zero interest in virtual reality or augmented reality, and have started grilling them about what's this new Apple thing.
Yeah.
It's... Yeah.
Well, that's the big thing. That's really the main thing of this presentation, as far as I can see. It's about bringing it more into the mainstream. And I mentioned this, and this has actually been, said on many, many podcasts since this announcement. But it does legitimise this technology going forward. If you've got somebody, and let's be clear about this as well. Apple are the richest company in the world, and they've got the most money in order to invest in this kind of stuff. And if you look at the list of the richest companies, Meta are way, way down, but they've invested ridiculous amounts of money in VR. Apple have the resources to take this to the next level, and people have mentioned this provides competition for Meta. And on the one hand, it definitely does for the Quest Pro. I think it really does, because this is what Mark Zuckerberg wants the Quest Pro to be. Honestly, that's what I believe. But at the same time, I think I read somewhere, or somebody mentioned, that actual sales of the Quest 2 have gone up since this announcement. People are interested in it. It benefits everybody, this kind of announcement, and the interest it generates. So this is a good thing, and I do not understand anybody just dismissing this and saying it's not for gaming, it's not for me, I'm out. And fair enough, you don't have to buy it. I'm not going to buy it, but to completely dismiss it as nothing is a mistake, in my opinion. So I'm pleased it's got announced, and hopefully we'll see all of this technology come along. And,
hey, you say it's not for gaming. They've announced Rec Room and Windlands 2.
Yeah.
Did I read that you were supposed to be working on virtual desktop for it, or is that just some sort of medical induced?
No,
thing I've imagined.
I think it's. Yeah.
You mentioned that when we were playing Walkabout, so
I'm sure I've seen it. Yeah,
that would be good. Yeah,
but whether it can get it passed on the Apple Store or not, I don't know. But then you're going to start. That's what Bluetooth controllers, can't you? So
that's what people have been saying. It's whether they'd allow something like virtual desktop on the store or not.
Yeah, but it's the motion controller question as well, isn't it? Around all of this stuff.
Yeah.
How do they deal with that kind of situation? But it's all that kind of thing is a little bit up in the air. But one thing I wanted to ask you guys specifically is about this this screen on the front that shows the eyes. So I actually, personally, I love this. I think this is what is going to make a difference for the mainstream audience. It's gamers, and I'm wearing a bloody Pimax Crystal where I look absolutely ridiculous. It's massive. I don't care about that kind of stuff, but for a connection with other people, that I think this is important. And it still looks ridiculous on this headset only because of the size of it, and it's been made fun of a little bit as well. But this is I personally think this is a good thing. I think this is going to become before we get to actual glasses, I think this is going to become a much more common feature on these types of headsets.
Yeah, it has been made fun of, and other people said, "Oh, it sort of looks a bit uncanny and whatever." I think it's the first version of it in a commercial headset. You know, what's it going to be like? Generation 2 or 3? You know. And I think a lot of people forget as well that Meta showed basically this idea off a few years ago now. As a demo unit, when they were showing like Half Dome and all that sort of thing. They had this idea, apart from, for some reason, they were using like trying to use a light field display on the front, whereas this is basically just like a lenticular screen. I remember when Meta showed that off, and they got annihilated by most of the VR community. You know, there were people screaming at Meta saying, "Why are you wasting your time spending money on this and that and the other when you should be putting it into, you know, more important areas?" And then Apple do it, and it sort of gets, I don't know, laughed at a bit.
It's been laughed at from the mainstream. I don't know if you guys watch This Week, listen to This Week in Tech, or watch This Week in Tech. So if you want to be dampened on this headset, then go in and watch the latest episode of that, because it's Leo Laporte, who is not really a big believer in VR anyway, and he's got a team of mainstream tech journalists who are basically calling this headset a complete duff. They do not understand it at all. So go and check that out if you want to get some kind of mainstream perspective on this, because
Tyler, I really like the eyes thing as well when they're showing that, because it's typical of Apple. You know, I mean, you're about Meta saying it before, but when, like, if I'm in the living room and I'm playing and my missus walks in, I don't know if she's there or she's sat there, but if she's talking to me and I can flick it back and look at her in the eyes and carry on talking, there's not that disconnect there, is there? And I mean, the thought of that, which I thought, well, no, I wouldn't have thought of doing that. So they're just adding this technology in, aren't they, that no one would normally do.
I mean, that seems pretty cool, how, like, if somebody walks into your sort of area, that it actually fades them in. Into your view. It's like, it's crazy, some of the stuff what's in this headset. But
it is madness. It really is madness. And just on your point there before, Rog, where you were talking about people, because this is the first time where something has been announced, and I could talk to my brother and my dad about it, and they know what I'm talking about.
Oh, right.
Because I said, did you see? I said, like, before, I spoke about a week before this was announced, we knew it was going to be announced. I said Apple are going to be announcing this VR headset, and they know I'm into VR and stuff. And I said, and then afterwards I mentioned it, and they knew what I was talking about, at least, at the very least. So, yeah.
I mean, the only sort of main negative, really, I saw of it mentioned a few times, is people didn't seem to think it was particularly lightweight.
No,
it's still front heavy, and you look at it, and it's going to be, and it's a fabric strap. There's no battery on the back. It's the battery's tethered, and they're using glass on the front of it. For God's sake, it's like
metal as well.
It's like. It seems a bit, they're definitely going for the aesthetics and everything rather than sort of functionality there. It's like, how much better could it be if they knocked all that off?
Yeah, but, Apple's going to Apple. Pimax. So we could probably, has anybody else got any closing thoughts on the Apple Vision Pro anyway? Like we said, it has been spoken about a lot over the past 2 weeks.
No, I'll just reiterate. Go and listen to the 3 interviews on Voices of VR podcast if you want sort of a really good overview on it by VR people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm not a hater of it. I know I said at the beginning I don't know who it's aimed for, but I do love the technology in it, and the presentation made me want to find $3,500 like that.
Yeah, well, to be fair,
even though I don't need it.
Yeah. To be fair to you, Lee, I mean, I don't really know who will be buying this necessarily, other than developers for future products, because it's a tough thing. It is the thing we've not mentioned, and we don't need to mention. It's been mentioned. It's got an M2 chip in there, as well as another chip dedicated to managing all these sensors. This really is like a MacBook Pro level device, which is ridiculously powerful. It could run. I mean, you can only imagine some of the stuff that it could run if it's being not sort of throttled by the power management of that battery and all these kinds of things, which we don't know. But this is, I don't know who it's for, but I love it. And I want them to carry on with this kind of stuff, because eventually it will get to a product where I think it is for people and people will be interested in it.
Yeah.
But it did kind of remind me of your book, though, Gary. Like, spoiler alert, when the guy goes in and he sits at his desk and he fires up his headset and it brings up 3 monitors in front of him and stuff. And when that bloke was doing it, when he was stood up, this is like, Gary, hang on a minute, I think we need to get some lawyers in on this. This is Gary's idea.
But with the memory stuff as well in this, where they're showing that capture. See, to me, that looked really interesting. I thought that and some people have been laughing at that as well, saying how he's recording it, wearing this headset at his children's party and stuff. And on the one hand, I can sort of understand how that wouldn't be a good look. But at the same time, if you're capturing this kind of footage and you can look back on it in 10 years' time, it's got some value to it. And,
especially for the kids thing and that were going on that. Because I said to my missus, because we've got a video when my daughter started first walking at her mum's house, and I said, wouldn't that have been great for me to capture that, though? In in real time 3D, so that anyone else could view it as it happened and as I saw it forever. Yeah. So go and check out The Memory Engine by Gary Walkden. Anyway, that's the if you enjoy poorly written books, that is. Make sure you do.
That's if you've managed to get through all the adverts that we intersperse through these podcasts.
By the way, so I never ever put mid-roll adverts in these podcasts. By the way, I should make that clear to the commenter. I never do that. I'm not going to stop the podcast for a little advert in the middle. It's never going to happen. But anyway. Oh, God. Sorry, I hit a nerve there, I think. But we should probably get on to the UploadVR Summer Showcase stuff. So this was pretty long. I didn't watch it live. I skimmed through it afterwards, but you guys did. What was your overall impression of it?
Good grief. After an hour, I was thinking, is this going to finish? I counted 69 titles, and I don't know if I can. I think I might have lost count at that as well. It's like, this was ridiculous. It's like, help. If you was if you're a Quest only, I'd say if you're a Quest only gamer, this was probably a good showcase.
Yeah.
You know, if you're sort of like PSVR 2 PC sort of VR gamer, there was a lot of Quest level stuff in it, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. What did you think, Lee, overall?
I couldn't cope with the audio levels. Now, I'm probably being picky, but the audios just seem way off to me. They're either too loud or they've got the background music too loud. And I said to Roger, I can't watch more of this, do my head in. But I have been back since and like skimmed through the games. And yeah, I just had to echo what Roger says. There seem to be a lot of overly, Quest 2 games showcased there. But, some of the new ones, like we'll talk about soon, coming out on PC VR, and some that I've not heard of as well, so...
Yeah. To be honest, when I see Upload, they've had these for a few years now, and fair play to them. I mean, they're doing something and they're getting stuff out there. I never expect massive announcements or anything like that. And when you put that on Discord, Lee, about the audio levels, I was thinking, it's just being picky here. You absolutely weren't. I mean, it was a little bit ridiculous in some places, the audio levels on this, but at the same time, they're doing it, and we're getting some announcements at least. So fair play.
Probably because we edit videos and things like that, we know, what to look out for, and perhaps the average person probably wouldn't, maybe not pick up on it as such. But we
no, there were points
people.
where Kyle's audio when he was talking was just getting drowned out almost.
Yeah,
it was really bad.
Bit I saw, but. Anyway, that's sort of superficial stuff. It doesn't matter. Let's talk about some of the actual announcements that we got. Yeah. So we're only going to go through some of the stuff that stood out to us. We've got a few games down here, sort of a list of about 8-9 games or so. And the first one that stood out to me was one called Genotype. I don't know anything about it. And it might be a roguelike or roguelite, I don't know, because it said something at the end of this trailer which seemed to imply that. But anyway, it's got this sort of sci-fi, dark aesthetic about it. And again, I don't know a lot about it. It just was one of the first ones throughout this whole showcase that stood out to me. So, that's it. So at the end of the trailer, it says explore, adapt, survive. And I assume that's sort of playing in some kind of roguelike kind of mechanics, and I'm not really into those, so we'll see on this one. I need a bit more info.
Yeah. But apparently there's an open beta beginning the 17th of next month.
Okay, right.
Free to check it out.
Yeah. The next one that I noticed was called The Burst, and I actually had to check this one afterwards, actually. This is on Steam. This was a Steam game. I don't believe it's coming out on Quest, this one. At least not at launch. And this is... It doesn't... the graphics don't look particularly spectacular or anything, but it's a single-player shooter. And it looks like it's got some pretty good like parkour kind of mechanics and Spider-Man kind of mechanics where you swing across these levels. And I didn't know if this was like multiplayer or not. And it turns out it's a single-player game. So, it just looks interesting. I don't know. Did you guys see this one, The Burst?
I don't know whether the visuals remind me of... What was that really early VR game by... Was it by Servios? That multiplayer game? Where you built like a vehicle. You could sort of put armour on a vehicle. It was...
no, that wasn't Servius. You talk about Hover Junkers.
Sorry. Who was...
I don't think it was Servius. No. We'll have to check that out.
I don't
know.
I'll do it now.
Just some of the visuals of the vehicles just reminded me of that for some reason.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it was Stress Level Zero.
Stress Level Zero.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
So The Burst, that was another one. I thought, the thing is, anything that I'm mentioning here, by the way, I just don't know a lot about these games. These are just like the trailers that jumped out to me as being something that I'd keep an eye on at least. The next one for me was Grimlord, which actually had a demo on Steam.
Yeah.
I think the demo's been taken down, and I was going to download... Well, I did download the demo. I never jumped into it, and I had it on my PC for... a few weeks and never got round to it, but it just looked pretty interesting, like a medieval kind of hack and slash type thing, a little bit blade and sorcery in terms of physics. It looks like it's physics based anyway, so we'll see about that. But
I did play the demo a while ago, actually.
Oh, did you?
I'm sure might have been Gramsy that messaged me about it on Twitter, so I had a go of it. And yeah, quite good. But at the time, I was suffering with like heart stuff, so I couldn't really swing my swords around and axes and that because it was just causing me too much pain. But yeah, visually it looked very, very good. And I mean, it looks like on the trailer they've worked on it way, way more than when I first played it.
Yeah, that was my impression, because I remember looking at this on Steam and downloading the demo, and I thought it looks pretty. It looked pretty indie at that time. But and it's still indie, but it looks like I think the thing that's attracting me a little bit is this physics-based combat, which it looks to have, and I think Blade and Sorcery feels really good to play, although it's just a sandbox. That's the problem with Blade and Sorcery. It's not got any kind of narrative, and if this has, or some kind of story to play through, I think that would elevate it to that level if it's got that kind of combat.
Yeah.
But and finally for me is lo-fi. Probably don't need to talk about this too much. It's
I mean, I think most of us are probably wanting to have a look at this because it does look gorgeous. I mean, it looks gorgeous, doesn't it, visually?
Yeah.
It's just that worry about what the game's going to be. Whether if it's going to be too sandboxy, because it keeps saying you can do what you want sort of thing, but everything that's been shown off of it, the cityscape looks amazing, but it looks it doesn't look occupied, it looks barren.
Well, yeah, and people because you can buy this now and play early versions of it that gets updated, and I haven't, but I think I probably will pick this up when it finally gets a release. But yeah, I don't know what the actual game is. Are there actual missions? Are there actual... I don't know. It might just be delivering stuff, but it looks like this combat is in there. So, yeah, we need more information on this, I guess.
Yeah.
But
he's been working on it quite a few years, hasn't it, Blair? Is it Blair? What's been doing it?
Yeah, many years.
I've seen this one about on Twitter ever since I've been on for 2 or 3 years, so yeah, I know he's been working on it a while.
Yeah.
But he did, because he did Technolust, didn't he, on the years ago, which was pretty good. But again, I mean, Technolust wasn't really a game, was it? From what I can remember, I only went in there a couple of times, I think. But
no, it had a story. It was there was a game to play through, but again, it was the world again felt empty. There was the characters you needed to sort of interact with, and then that always seemed to be it. I don't know.
Okay, Rog, what about you then? Well, let's talk about Throwback, because both you and Lee seem to be interested in this.
For this, as soon as this came up, the entire chat channel went, "Oh wow, it's Paperboy."
That's what I thought. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and it basically sort of kind of does look like a VR version of Paperboy from the arcade way back when. But the thing what got me was some of the stuff in it seemed to be a bit bonkers. There was like UFOs flying about and everything like that, and it immediately reminded me of dumpy going elephants back on the DK1, which was like a tech demo for a game that was never made. It's just a demo, but visually and all the bizarre stuff going off just instantly reminded me of that, and it just seems so sort of crazy. Some of the stuff happening, and it's a cartoony visuals, but it's not low poly. It's a Steam. It is coming out on Steam, so it's a PC game. And I don't know. There was just something I liked about just the look of it for some reason, and the craziness of it. Yeah,
definitely. I'm saying with you. I quite like. Visually it was very pleasing on the eyes, and then it had got some like sort of 80s kind of pixely bits when he was like chucking these papers, wasn't he? And getting them in the letterbox, then it was going ting, and then popping up like a pixel score how it used to be, and the music was quite 80s game kind of themed as well. So I think that's what caught my attention. But yeah, like Rog says though, everything was happening a lot on screen, so there'd be quite a lot to take in when you're playing it. It was quite hectic. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
It was quite a bit of a visual overload at times. So I sort of really liked that. Yeah.
There was a Paperboy type game a few years ago that was released in VR. It was really, really basic, but I remember that, and I because I like Paperboy, and I thought I'd go in and try that. This one looks like it's taking it to the next level, and yeah, you're right, it looks completely bonkers. Some of the levels that you're going through, they are ridiculous. But I mean, I'm interested in this one as well, but it's very arcadey, it looks like, but there's a lot going on, so we'll see.
Yeah. After that, it was B99 Overclocked. Again, this is another sort of retro looking thing, arcade style maybe ish in its visuals. I think, as far as I'm aware, B99 is actually a flat game, and B99 Overclocked is basically a VR port, as far as I can see. It's sort of like an arcadey shooter rogue. It might be like a sort of roguelike or roguelite. And that's all I know about it, really. It's just sort of like, neon-y, retro-looking shoot-'em up. And, yeah, I don't know. Looks like the sort of thing I might like.
Is this the one that looked a bit like Tron, but like multicoloured?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that one as well. That was quite cool.
Yeah. I mean, visually, definitely not anywhere near like as good as that Throwback or anything, but
no.
It looks like it might. Yeah, I don't know. It just felt like it might be something what I like.
Was this PSVR 2, this one, as well?
I can't remember.
Because I'm just thinking it might look pretty good in that headset, this kind of style.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next on the list, we've got Madison VR, Lee.
Yeah.
Horror.
I don't know if you guys are aware of Madison horror game. I don't know, probably Roger probably isn't because it's not his thing, but
I've heard the name, but that's it.
Yeah, that's it for
I think
me.
it came out last year and people raved about how scary it was. I think Ben played it and Dr. Greg. I think PD played it with Vorpex, or it may have been Richard, I can't remember. And we actually commented on one of Madison's tweets that this would be fantastic if he did a VR mode for it. And I'm not saying it's down to me, VRAN, Dr. Greg or PD, but they later did post saying, yeah, we are working on a VR version of it. So you're welcome, everybody. That's us. And I've heard it's supposed to be, like I said, the scariest game ever. And it's the most people's messaged me saying, I want to see you playing this. So, I mean, they must have seen some of my horror videos on YouTube and see how much I get scared. So I'm really looking forward to that one. I think, I can remember from the trailer, Gary, you'll be watching it. They've updated the graphics as well. So they've kind of upscaled everything and done all the textures again.
Yeah, they seem to be showing that on the trailer. Yeah, that's right.
So I'm really looking forward to that. I
heard PSVR Without Parole talking about this, and I don't know if it's the actual same game. Is the flat game? Is it a VR
version of it? I believe it's the same game, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Okay.
But it is coming to PSVR 2 as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, like all of this stuff, we need to know a bit more information about everything. I suppose these are just trailers.
I mean, don't quote me on that, but I believe it is the game. But it's one of those where, I did catch a bit of PD stream. It's made for VR. It's one of them what's definitely made for VR.
Yeah. Thing is, VR and horror just go hand in hand in a lot of ways, don't they? So, but not for Rog. Rog doesn't.
Not for Rog.
Yeah.
If it's got some look, that Propagation Paradise Hotel were pretty good.
Yeah.
But at least there was some setup before it started throwing you into the dark horror bits, and you know what I mean. And that had more atmosphere than Cosmodread for me, easily.
Yeah.
Talking about them, they retweeted my tweet when I put the bloke jumped out and scared me to death, and I was firing my gun off, panicking. They retweeted that yesterday. I was quite surprised. So thanks for that.
Yeah. I like that one, and I like horror games in VR, but honestly, it's not like I'll play one after the other all the time. It's like few and far between, just because you have to be in the right mood and right frame of mind, I think, to really get into them. But I enjoy them now and again anyway.
You definitely get that feeling when you've been playing, like, and I wouldn't say euphoria, but you get the adrenaline rush. Apart from Roger. But you definitely get that when you take the headset off, you're like, wow, yeah.
Yeah. But next on the list, we've got Inversely. I might have missed this one. I don't remember seeing this one.
It was, it's like a 5-player multiplayer thing. I think one of your players, this is all going on from the trailer, so I'm only speculating here, but it looks like 4 of the guys are trying to get away and try and teleport out of the area.
Oh.
You've got the suits on, like radiation suits, and then there's one monster trying to kill him. So I don't know if one of you plays with the monster, and then 4 of you are trying to do various puzzles to try and escape. I thought that was quite interesting.
Do you know what? Do you know? Sorry to interrupt. Do you know what? When I saw this, I skipped because I was skipping through the upload showcase. I thought this was Stranger Things again.
Oh,
yeah, it does got a bit of that vibe. Yeah,
yeah, it's got.
well, yeah, it's all red.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 4v1 asymmetrical horror. So yeah, four people versus one.
That'd be quite a good laugh to have when you've had a few beers, maybe.
Yeah, so there's that, and then finally, I think this was you as well, Lee Wanderer. Which
I think that's right.
That was actually me. Yeah,
yeah.
Because as bad as it is, I never played the original because it came out on PSVR, didn't it? And it was like, I don't want to use move controls.
Yeah.
And then it came out on PC, and it was like, well, it's a bit of an older game now.
Yeah.
But it's one of those games. It's like, I really should have played this because I think I can't remember what was it. Was it Virtual Strangers gave it their sort of like Game of the Year at one point?
I think they really like it. I think they do.
Yeah,
really like
it was, and it's I mean, it's generally amazingly well regarded. And this is basically seems to be like an upgraded version of the original. So it's the original game with extra bits. And you look at that trailer, and some of it is like.
It looks great.
It's really sad when you say this, but it's got the reflections in it look really cool as well. It's like, wow, there's mirrors in this game, and these mirrors actually work. Wow, shocking, especially
I'm a reflections
in VR.
guy, Rog. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and it just I mean, I've sort of sat there thinking, well, I mean, it was originally a PSVR game, so maybe they can actually, maybe it won't run at 60 reprojected, maybe some extra poke will get it up to 90 or 120, but yeah, hope springs eternal, I suppose. But, I want to play it. I want to play this version.
I picked this game up on PC. There was I don't know if it was a Fanatical bundle or Humble bundle or something like that. Do you know,
I was thinking earlier, I thought, I'm sure I got this in a bundle, but if I have, I've never redeemed it.
Ah, right. Yeah, so I've got this installed on my PC, and it's basically top of the list of the games I've not played to get to. So I'm going to play this at some point anyway, because it does look great. It looks like my kind of game, so I'll be interested to give it a try. You've played it, haven't you, Lee, I think?
Yeah, I played up to, spoiler alert, you go to like another area than what you're in, but it takes some, especially if you're not a puzzle guy like I'm not, it took some time to try and work everything out, because you like sort of going around in this apartment when you eventually get to it, and it's like, oh, that bit's for that and this is for that, right? I understand that. But yeah, it does take some getting into, but if that's your thing, then a lot of jumping back and forth in different areas. People probably seen that on the trailer, I'm not sure, but I really liked it, what I played.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the ones that stood out to us anyway, and we'll keep an eye on all of them. Hopefully we'll get some more information over the next few weeks and months. But also going along with this showcase was UploadVR had a Humble Bundle for, what is it, £20 and 5 pence, where you get Saints and Sinners 1 and 2, Dragon Fist VR, Kung Fu, Pistol Whip, Green Hell VR, Warhammer, Tempest Fall, and Mask Maker, and it's still available for the next 2 weeks, it says down here as well. So sounds like a great bundle if you've not got those games.
If you've never picked up Saints and Sinners especially, that's an absolute bargain. So check that out on Humble Bundle. And this next one, so we'll move on. The next little news story we've got down here. So Meta reducing the minimum age of Quest users from 13 to 10 years old. This has gone down.
Reason not to go in Horizons.
Yeah, we'll see how this works. But yeah, well, Lee, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I don't know. Why have they lowered this down? I thought before it was because they had it at that age due to the eye development.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
Well, that became the official sort of thing, didn't it, afterwards? Because when the DK1 first came out, the very first versions of the SDK listed it not to be used by anybody under 6 years of age. Yeah. Then it went up to 7 years of age. But then, when Meta bought it out, it became 13 years of age. and I can't remember if it was Nate Mitchell or Brendan Areeb, right at the time that happened, basically confirmed it was because it was just to bring it in line with Meta's policy of 13 years old
for Facebook
being what you need, what you needed for a Facebook account. Afterwards, it sort of changed, and it suddenly afterwards it became, oh well, it's because we don't know what the effect of it will VR will have on developing eyesight. But that was never the original thing. No. It was always, I'll say, it was always just that 13 was because that was how old you needed to be for a Meta account or a Facebook account at the time. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, my 10-year-old daughter goes into VR now and again, but we do look like we set a timer on Amazon Echo. I won't say the name because 30 minutes that she's allowed like that in one session, but. She doesn't go in multiplayer stuff. None of my kids go in multiplayer stuff on VR, which, if you are in multiplayer stuff, it seems to ruin the experience, doesn't it? You see this pop up so many times of squeakers. They're called squeakers, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah, it would. I can understand the frustration of that, to be honest.
And we don't mean like every kid's like this, but it's just, we've been kids, so we know exactly what we were like at 10-year-old. So I'm not like knocking them for what they're doing, because that's what
extremely
that's what
well behaved in my case, Lee. But,
yeah. Oh yeah, me too. But yeah, I understand. I jumped in like the Horizon one a bit, and we were trying to kick a kid out. I think I mentioned it before, and I'd just jumped in this room and they're trying to ban this kid. I thought, well, what do you expect from this sort of age? You're not going to get anything else but that, really. And running around and squealing and shouting. That's what they do.
A lot of it as well, though, I think it's where they're not supervised and they're using obscenities constantly and this kind of stuff. And that would piss you off, wouldn't it? So
yeah, they're being thrown into a VR headset to be used as for it to be used as childcare.
Yeah,
and it's.
But we'll have to see how the numbers go up for Gorilla Tag, I guess.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. By the way, I'm proud to say that my kids, because a few months ago, my son came up to me and says he heard of a game called Gorilla Tag, and I sighed deeply, and so he tried it. Luckily, both him and my daughter bounced off it straight away. They didn't like it at all. So, yeah, that's actually one of my proudest parenting moments, so.
Somebody actually, who was it? I don't know. Was it Mike or GT or somebody put a tweet out? Or was it? Oh, it might have been. Was it Kyle? I can't remember. Somebody put a tweet out saying, "Does anybody actually know what the IPD setting is for a 10-year-old?"
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was Kyle. I think it was Kyle. Yeah. He put it on, and yeah, that's a good point because what's the smallest the Quest 2 goes down to? Is it 60?
62.
It might be 50.
Is it lower?
No. I thought it was like 50. I thought it was around about just short of 60, 58, 59 maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It might be. I think the mid one's 64, and then it goes up to about 68. Is it 69?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's a good point though. But maybe they're talking about this from the Quest 3 point of view, and hopefully that'll have better IPD adjustment.
Well, they did specifically mention, lowering this age range for Quest 2 and 3.
Ah, right.
So unless they modify the oldie Quest 2 to have a bit of a wider IPD range, I don't know. Maybe they do fall into that. Maybe that's been chosen because they fall into that range.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
It's got to get it right. Okay. Do you know what I mean? This IPD thing. I've said it 1,000 times before. You put a 10-year-old kid in there and they don't get that IPD setting right, it's going to be thrown up within seconds and they'll never use VR ever again.
Yeah, it's not good. And this is one of the reasons with you, Lee, why the Quest 2 isn't as good a headset, isn't it? Like the IPD.
No. I struggle with it, yeah. I mentioned it to Scorpio, and he actually brought up a good thing, because I was saying, look, I'm usually fine if it's slow pace, so like Walkabout Golf, or like, say, Propagation, for example, where you're walking around doing pretty slow. I can do fast turning, smooth turning, as long as it's fast. It's got to be a fast pace. But if I'm playing a fast-paced game, like, was it the Medieval VR, something like that, within 10-15 minutes I start to feel the effects of it, and now like Scorpio's like, well, perhaps it's because it's slightly blurred for you and it's having that effect because it's not clear enough for you. And I was like, oh yeah, never really thought of that. You're probably right. The fast movement is doing me in.
Yeah, there was a nice failure of logic from somebody who had one of the Apple demos. I can't remember, somebody I'd not heard of before. I don't know who it was, but they were raving about how their Apple demo hadn't made them feel ill or remotely sick or anything like that. Whereas if they played PSVR 2, then after around about an hour, they'd start feeling ill and they'd have to take it off. I thought, that's great, isn't it? So you're praising this Apple headset for not making you feel like that, despite the fact you only actually had 30 minutes in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go,
Sort of fanboy.
Well, just on IPD, going back to the Pimax, because the 8KX, which actually was a pretty good headset to me, I was quite impressed with it. But the main criticism I had with that headset is the IPD adjustment. It just wouldn't go. The lenses wouldn't get close enough together. For me, I've got an IPD around. It's just under 63, I think. I usually set stuff to around 63mm, and it's fine. But even on the lowest setting, which registered as like 58 in the Pimax 8KX, it wasn't small enough. And people have actually modded it because of that. It's like a known issue with the 8KX. But with a Crystal, that's one of the good things. Like the IPD adjustment is really good in the Crystal, at least. So I can get that to where I want it to be, at least. But it's a different kind of thing. It's not got that field of view, I guess. But
I think I'm sure I've read somewhere as well. If you're a millimeter off, like the Quest, say you're all 62 mil, and it's it's between those settings, you're going to feel the effects of it. Still, even though it's just that slight couple of millimeter, you're going to be feeling it.
I think it's still really very dependent on the person, because it's like, I know and I can't remember which way it is, but my IPD is like 63.9999 recurring almost. So 64, but it's asymmetric, and I can't remember which way it is. So I'm a millimeter one way. So effectively, for one of my eyes, my IPD is actually effectively 62 millimeters, where for the other one it's effectively 65. But overall it's 64, because it's
the Lynx, I believe, and I'm pretty sure it was the Lynx headset that has independent control over the lenses. So I'm almost certain it was the Lynx R1 that had that. And also they experimented with the pass-through cameras, by the way, where they were moving the cameras themselves for the pass-through with the lenses. But they found that after experimenting with it, that it didn't make enough of a difference to really warrant the extra expense. But that's RPD is important for certain headsets anyway. Right, let's get on to some upcoming games, which we've only got one. Lee, you put this one down, and you mentioned it last time, VR Giants.
Been a bit lax, haven't we?
It's just been released. Well, there's been a couple of games out this week. I know, like VR Giants, I think it released Wednesday, Thursday, and I was supposed to play with PD actually, but unfortunately it's not multiplayer, and I didn't realise this. It's same PC, so one of you's in VR and one of you's actually on the PC as well. I mean, you can take turns, I suppose, and who wants to do what. But that's a puzzle type cartoony game where you're trying to get these little coins, and it opens up the next level. So you're using planks or using anything around, and as the giant, the little boy can teleport you around because you're stuck on a chain. So you have to keep going to different points as the giant on the chain to help and lift him up and do that kind of thing. And it's one of my favourite games I played last year as a demo. So it's just been released now. I think it's $13.49 with a discount. It's early alpha as well, so they are going to be improving it. But it's one of them where I played last year and then never heard anything about it. So I'm quite pleasantly surprised when I saw it pop on Twitter they were bringing it out.
Yeah. Just quickly, off the top of anybody's head, what else is coming out? We've got some stuff coming out.
Pixel Ripped's come out, hasn't it? Has that come out now? The
Pixel Ripped is out. Yep, that's right.
Pixel Ripped is out, but unfortunately we've not got a key for that, and none of us have bought it.
Although, I mean, I was actually planning on picking that one up, but I've just the problem is it's not that. I mean, we don't automatically assume we're going to get a key or anything like that. It's more the fact that we've had a lot of stuff to play and it's been hot and we've not really wanted to play stuff, because I still have plans to pick up Pixel Rip 1978 anyway. But there is a bundle on the Oculus Store at the minute, because I think there's still a sale on the Oculus Store. What started the other, well, was it this week or last week? I can't remember. I think,
but there was, you could get Pixel, you could get the new, is it 84, the new one?
78.
78,
sorry.
84 was the first one, right?
89.
Right, so
it was again.
So it's I forgot. Oh, good grief! So it was the new. It was whatever the last one was plus the new one for something. Okay. Something like a few. It literally just a few quid more than just buying the new one by itself.
The first one was DLC for 1995. So because they couldn't get it on the official store, I think. So maybe they're adding it as DLC or I don't know if they've done it as a separate release now. I'm not sure, but yeah. I mean, they're good games. The reviews that I've seen are a little bit lukewarm on this latest one.
There seem to be 7 out of 10s. I've seen a few. I've seen like 2 or 3 reviews saying it's the weakest of the 3.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I enjoy them for what they are. They're not.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Ubris is out as well on PSVR 2 next week. Is it? Is it next week?
That's right. Yeah, I think is that the 21st.
21st or the 22nd.
21st.
21st.
I don't know. This is the kind of stuff that we're rubbish at.
Yeah. Yes.
It's around then anyway. 21st, 22nd. Check it out. Check it out on the app.
It's
PSVR 2 and Quest
2 as well. Right. Is that out there on the Quest?
Yes.
Quest 2 and PSVR 2. I think it's on the same day. Maybe we should research it because Hubris. A lot of people are actually looking forward to this one, aren't they? I think. But we can get into it next time anyway because we'll talk about it. We spoke about the Steam version ages ago. So
yeah.
Right. What else have we got to finish off? I've lost where I am.
Crossfire Sierra Squad, which I think, everybody seemed to assume it was going to be a PSVR 2 exclusive, but it's coming to Steam.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I'm still looking forward to it on PSVR 2 simply because of the fact they've said before that it's a native 90 Hz game. So I'll look forward to it on that one. And it's a co-op game though for multiplayer. It's not PvP.
Oh,
it's
right.
Co-op.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just co-op. So I don't know if there's actual cross-play or not between the 2 platforms, but if there isn't, then it's not as great a loss as it would have been if it had been relying on a multiplayer community, for PvP or anything. But
yeah. Okay, and finally we've got the Assassin's Creed Nexus. So this was shown off. We had a CGI trailer at the Ubisoft Forward.
I hate
thing.
CGI trailers.
Yeah, we thought we were going to see something more than that at this one. I did anyway. I thought we'd see more, but I mean, I don't know why they do these kinds of trailers. This is like the advert. Do you remember those Quest adverts where they were doing Population 1 and Star Wars and stuff? And it was like this, and you just think this is not representative at all of what you're going to get. So who knows what we're going to get from this?
Now, some screenshots did turn up.
Yeah,
and that started off a massive argument on Discord as well.
Did it?
Good grief. There was those are definitely sort of Quest screenshots to no, they're not. My 3080 Ti couldn't run that, which I thought was a bit of an extreme example, because if you look at them, it's a bit of a mixed bag because it sort of looks like, well, could a Quest do that really? But when I don't know. It felt to me like it was maybe a mobile version of a game, but running on sort of running on the PC development hardware, because it's hard to judge because of the JPEG compression and everything. But some of the anti-aliasing looked a bit too good in places.
Draw distance as well looked pretty
the draw distance looked pretty good, and people were saying, "Oh, look at the shadows," but the shadows of the buildings could just be baked into the texture map. And if you looked at the characters, there were basic blob shadows, what were there when we were playing DirectX 7 games. So that wasn't anything complex. And if you look, one of the screenshots, if you look at the geometry on the buildings, the geometry is horrifically low. The edge of a building is just really flat and sharp. There's some bricks sticking out at one point, but basically they look like the cubes that have just been angled. There's no beveling or anything. It's really basic geometry where the detail seems to have been reserved for the characters. So
I noticed that particular one as well myself.
So I think there's a bit of a mixture going off there. Maybe in-game assets, but rendered a bit nicer than it would otherwise be. I don't know.
Now, take this with a pinch of salt as well, because I heard, and it might have been on, I don't know if it was another podcast or I read it somewhere, but apparently Ubisoft put out a tweet to say that these are Quest 2 screenshots.
Right.
So they confirmed apparently that they are Quest 2. Now, look into that a bit deeper. I've not got time to actually try and search for that now, but that thought just came into my head. So
yeah. I mean, if that's Quest 2, it looks pretty good for a.
It looks very
Quest
good for a
2.
Quest 2. Yeah.
But the thought I had though is, well, do we even, I mean, was it EA whoever did Grid? They might be doing one of those things where it's like we don't know what frame rate this is. We don't know. Those screenshots at say 1080p or something in a headset would look not great. And we don't even know what the frame rate is. They could be running at 36 and reprojecting, like Grid did. We don't know. We just don't know.
No, I'm going through. I'm trying to find if they did tweet that, but I can't find it. So that's just something I heard. So it might be true. It might not be. So
this is what happens when they do CGI trailers, because all it does is raise questions about, well, hang on a minute, this seems dodgy. Why aren't they showing any gameplay? So you automatically start doubting what the game's going to be, and that's just my normal reaction.
Yeah.
One
of the other things, one of those screenshots as well, is the way his hand's sort of holding onto the edge of the wall, and that just sort of looks traditional animation rather than some sort of VR interaction. I don't know.
So we'll have to stay tuned for all that stuff. We might get some more information on that at Connect as well. But
is it supposed to be coming out this year?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it must be, because I think they were only showing stuff at the Metagaming Showcase, which was coming out this year, that they put a thing on at the beginning, and they did mention Assassin's Creed there. So well, that's about it for this episode then. Has anybody got any closing thoughts?
Just no more showcases for a while, please.
Yeah, it's been busy.
Showcased out.
Yeah.
And just to apologise if I've been off it because of this medication I'm on. So I'm sorry, guys, listening.
We've been on a psychedelic journey during this podcast.
You can ask me any question now from what we've said in the podcast, and I won't be able to answer you.
Right, anyway, so we'll get out of here. It's been a little bit shorter this episode, which is probably... This is really... I mean, what were we aiming for when we started this podcast, Rog? I said 30 to 45 minutes.
You were aiming for no longer than 3/4 of an hour. Yeah. Whereas I wasn't too, whatever.
Yeah, that was always in my mind. Like a 45-minute podcast, just in and out, get it done, be concise, but it never works out like that. And it's probably for the better anyway. So... That's good. Let's end it there then. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this podcast. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. And please like and subscribe. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever. What else do I usually say? Probably not.
Go buy Gary's book.
Oh, yeah.
No, you've used your advertising quota for the year. You can't say that now.
Yeah, that's true. And also, if there's mid-roll ads during this episode, then so be it. I don't care anymore. We're done. Let's get out of here. I'm going to probably post a Pimax Crystal video at some point in the next week. Anyway, giving some first impressions and getting into some more opinions on that. So you can check out the channel for that. But that's it. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next time.
Cheers, everyone.
Take care. I mean, I'm just sat in a pair of shorts. I didn't want to say that, obviously, on the podcast because I didn't want to put people off and make them switch off.
No, that's all right. I'll put this at the end then.
A pair of shorts. Yeah.